It's time for the Coach Groves Show, where we sit down with the head coach of the Darlington Tigers football team and talk about all things Darlington School football. Now we go live to Matt Davis and Ian Griffin, who are standing by with Coach Wayne Groves.
Indeed we are. We're very happy to be standing by with Coach Wayne Groves as we get ready for playoff edition Coach Groves Show. And first of all, Coach, just want to welcome you to your own show. We're glad to have you with us today, man. How are you?
Well, good to be back this week, and be glad to be talking about some Darlington Tigers playoff football. So
Absolutely.
That's great.
And this is a conversation that's taken place 18 consecutive years. Yep. So that's pretty remarkable to be able to extend that playoff streak. And, of course, you've been the head coach for 2 years and have made the playoffs your first 2 seasons. So congratulations. That's awesome.
Well, thank you. Thank you. It was it's a tradition at Darlington that, when the leaves start falling, you make the playoffs. And so, we knew this year was going to be a tough year. We knew, with the limited roster number of where we are going into the season with 33 kids, I think it's remarkable that our kids have fought and battled and just gave everything they got for this football program and to represent Darlington. And even, we got down to some games, we were dressing 26, only 27 kids. We went into the season with 7 offensive linemen, and that's not guys that are offensive linemen. Those are guys that are receivers that we moved to line because that was what we needed to do for the team. And so to get this team in the playoffs and to play guys, 3 linemen underneath 165 pounds, and to have going to some games with no backups, and for us to just battle and keep fighting and get this team in the playoffs is a tremendous effort. And it's hats off to our kids. It's hats off to our coaching staff for working their tail off and improving this team week after week to get us in this position right here. And so we're really proud about it, and I'm proud for the boys, but we're not done yet. We still got the playoffs to go. I told them everybody in this tournament now is a 0-0 record. So what you did before doesn't matter. Only thing that matters is what you're going to do this week. And so if we play like we're capable of playing, we're perfectly capable of winning this ball game and going to the Sweet 16. So I'm proud of my players and proud of our coaches to get to this point, but we got business to still handle.
Well, we're proud of you guys too, no question about that. And speaking of that, I thought a good place to start as we kind of recap the season a little bit, but a good way to do that is All-Region was announced here recently. So we got a list of your All-Region players and thought it'd be cool if we could start the show by having you just give a few words about each of those guys that you've been talking about already as we start the show.
Yeah, so we had 11 members of the varsity football team that received all-region honors. Jace Donaldson ended up getting Region Athlete of the Year. He split. There was a co-region athlete of the year. The vote was split. And so he split that with Sam Ross at Pepperell. And so, Jace affects the game in every aspect, offense, defense, special teams. He doesn't come off the field. And so that was huge. And for the folks that don't know, and when you get all region, that's a significant thing because the region coaches, we get together, we nominate players, and then the region coaches vote on those awards. And so when you get voted upon, that means obviously not only you have respect from your coaches and your head coach, but you're getting respect from those other coaches about how you've played and how you've operated throughout the region. So it's a huge deal to be all region, whether you're getting honorable mention or you're getting region player of the year or first team or second team. It's all a big deal because, it's good football. And there's a lot of good players in this region that we've talked about. So Jace Donaldson got the region athlete of the year. We had Noah Duggan that got first team linebacker. Noah's a senior and been starting for 3 years. Henry Ledbetter was first team defensive end. I'm very proud of that. Last year he was second team all region. This year he went first team all region. And I think, he wouldn't have had a little injury bug there and missed a couple of games, by talking to some of the coaches, I think Henry would have been in the talk for defensive player of the year. He was playing so good in the first 4 region ball games that was actually brought up. Miles Twyman, first team all-region running back. And then we had some second-team guys, Bryson Jones, second-team offensive line, our center, who has been a tremendous player for us this year. Sam 20, second-team all-region linebacker. Sam was honorable mention last year, so for him to get second-team, I think was huge. And then we had some honorable mention guys, Ade DeSalu, Trenton Moore, tight end, wide receiver, punter, Evan Parton, defensive line, and then Bodie Powers, honorable mention running back. So all those guys, it's great to be nominated and deserve those awards.
That's awesome, Coach. One of the players you just mentioned was our final regular season honeymoon bakery icing on the cake player of the game. That's Miles Twyman. This is his second time picking up the award this season, and he's been a bit banged up. I'm sure all your Tigers are at this stage of the season, but he's gritted it out and toughed it out. Talk about his toughness and how he competes every time he's on the field.
Well, Miles is extremely fun to coach, and it doesn't matter what kind of team function we have, whether we're practicing at 5:45 in the morning or if we're lifting weights in the afternoon or we're practicing in the evenings. If it's a team function, Miles Twyman shows up with a smile on his face, and he's ready to compete and he's ready to go. And that's what you want as a coach. You want guys that are always ready to give their best anytime they step on the field, because if you're going to be the guy, and I think Miles is a guy. You have no room to have a bad day. You have no room to not bring it. And he steps up to that role really well. And so, he had a little ankle injury there. If I wouldn't have held him out of practice and Donnie would have held him out, he wouldn't have missed any practice. We had to make him set out. And so, but Miles has got himself back healthy now. And I'm excited for what he's going to do on Friday. I think he's going to have a really good game, and he set himself up for that. But Miles has done a great job, and he's been a great leader for us. I made him a captain this year. He's been a captain quite a few times, and so he's going to continue to help lead this team by example and by word of mouth too.
This is the Coach Grove Show, everybody. A couple more questions left here in our opening segment of the show. I want to shift gears a little bit because obviously you guys didn't have a game last week. I know preparations have been on, get ready for the playoffs. But we did see you at a game. The Darlington Tigers won the Mites Championship in the United Football League, or the Unified Football League, rather. What are your thoughts on the exciting victory that your future Tigers picked up? That's a good-looking football team. I mean, they play very well.
Yeah, now this is the third year in a row they've won the Mite Championship. And so, Coach Philip Pilgrim, Coach Robert Hortman, and Coach Murphy, they do an excellent job with those kids. And so, I try to go down there and see them practice, at times. Last year I started a little 3rd through 5th grade strength conditioning club we do in the spring. I truly believe, that's the future of our program. So I want those kids to know me. I want those kids to develop a relationship with me. And I want those kids to be hungry to be a Darlington Tiger varsity player one day. And so, anytime we can get down there and support those guys, I think it's huge, and we're going to keep doing that. But it's a great group. About 4 or 5 more years, I'm going to get all those guys up there with me, and hopefully we can continue to ride that momentum. Because when teams win and those kids win, that is contagious. They get used to winning. They expect to win, and it's a beautiful thing once that thing starts to roll. So, hopefully we'll be able to get those guys up there pretty soon and get them to work. So,
well, the intensity and the enthusiasm that we saw them play with, I think they're going to be pretty eager to be up at that level. I mean, those kids played hard, no doubt about that.
They sure did. And Darlington, we talked about it in this first segment a good bit. 18 straight years in the playoffs. There's a winning culture that was here that you inherited and have continued that tradition. So Elizabeth, Matt's sister, suggested this question. She wanted to know, because playoff football is just a different animal, but she wanted you to go back to your playing career and have us ask you if there were any playoff games that stood out from when you were a player.
That's a pretty good question. Definitely. I would say my sophomore year in high school, 1996, take it back a little bit. I got to play my first playoff game as a sophomore, and we beat Gilmer County 47-0 in Lindale at Pepperell. So that's pretty cool. I think back, the first playoff game I got to play in, because there's going to be some kids going to play in the first playoff game tomorrow. And so 1996, same year, the next year, one that sticks out that's a loss. We lost to Lovett in the Sweet 16 that year, and we were up by like 21 points in the fourth quarter, and we let it slip away. We turned the ball over, and they made some big plays. They had a great running back, a great quarterback, John Porter, then, and a big fullback. They were running like flex bone like we run, Tyson Glasser, and they were really, really difficult to stop. But that one stands out because I thought that was one that kind of got away during my playing career. If we fast forward to the next year, 1997, we beat Creekside in the Sweet 16. That one's kind of special to me because we beat them 21-14, but I had a sack and a forced fumble that set up the winning score in that ball game.
Oh, wow.
So that one's pretty good. And that's, Creekside's like a 6A school now.
Right.
Back then they were AA, but they still had the same kind of athletes. And so when they came to Pepperell, that was a hard-nosed physical football game, and it was a good win for us then. 1997, got to play in the Georgia Dome. In that, we ended up losing to Washington County, which was the eventual state champion. And then in 98, a couple of different big ball games. In the Sweet 16 in 98, we beat Cartersville 10-7. That's when Ronnie Brown was their running back. Yeah. And I think we held Ronnie. Ronnie rushed the ball for about 30 times and had about 50 yards. And so we didn't score an offensive touchdown that game. Right before halftime, Cartersville drove down inside the 10 and decided they're going to throw a slant. And our free safety, Matt Johnston, picked it off and ran it back, and then Jonathan Kilgo kicked the field goal the second half. We beat Cartersville 10-7, and they were undefeated, 11-0 when we beat them. So that was a pretty special game. You talk about an atmosphere, at Cartersville, and be able to beat a team like that. And next year they went on to win the state. So in single A, Cartersville did. Then we got to go to Manchester for the Elite Eight game. And I don't know if you've ever been to Manchester or in Middle Georgia, they call it the Magic City down there. But the big thing in Manchester, Georgia, is they got one red light. And if you pull up to them, and they say if you pull your bus up to the one red light, then you're about to get your tail whipped. That's kind of their philosophy. And so we pull the bus in, we get rocks thrown at our bus, fans cussing you out as you walk onto the field, and then we ended up beating Manchester. And that time they had like a 43 home game winning streak, and we went down there and we beat them. And we beat them on the last play of the game. We won 17-15, but their quarterback throws up a Hail Mary at the end. The kid actually kind of catches it for a second, and our corner, TJ Wilson, knocks the ball out. So the ref starts to go like this, and he's like, no, incomplete. And the place just goes crazy. And then again, they pelt us with rocks as we're leaving the field. They pelt our bus with rocks as we're pulling out. But that was pretty wild and pretty cool experience to tell people about.
I'm getting chill bumps, man. That's awesome.
But yeah, Manchester's definitely a pretty hostile environment if you ever go down there to play. And then, in my senior year in '98, we lost to Carrollton in the Georgia Dome. We got to play in the Georgia Dome, and they were the state champions. But all those games are kind of pretty cool in my playing career.
I'm going to have to reach out to my sister more often.
I know. That was a good question.
That was a good question and a great answer. We enjoyed that, man. That's awesome. Well, that's going to wrap up our first segment here of the Coach Groves Show. When we come back, we've got the black shirts to talk about, and we also have the Getting to Know Coach Groves segment, which we did get to know Coach Groves a lot there in that first segment too, but we got a good question for that coming up as well. So we'll go ahead and take a break, and we'll come back in just a few moments, and we'll have all that and more. It's the Coach Groves Show. We'll be back.
Shop for your next car, truck, or SUV at Riverside Auto Group. Check out riversideautogroup.com today to browse their selection or visit with them in person at Riverside Chevrolet GMC in Rome, Riverside Toyota in Rome, and the all-new Riverside GMC Cadillac in Cartersville. Locally owned and operated by the Welburn family since 1974. That's Riverside Auto Group. Visit riversideautogroup.com.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to our playoff edition of the Coach Groves Show. And we'll jump right back into our second segment of the show by talking about the black shirts. Coach, tell us about the guys who got that award on offense, defense, special teams, and scout this week.
All right, so black shirts for this week, offense, it went to Miles Twyman. You guys, obviously saw how he played on 2 Fridays ago and had some really good runs and played physical and tough and all that. And then still coming off a little of the injury and working through that, I thought that was worthy of the black shirt. So the coaches voted Miles as offensive black shirt. On defense, Noah Duggan got the black shirt. He led the team in tackles against Bremen. I think he had like 10 tackles and really read pretty good at linebacker. So he got the defensive black shirt. Special teams, Jace Donaldson. I thought, Bremen's kicker is really good. He's a good kicker and a good punter. And so a bunch of his balls go into the end zone for touchbacks. And so we told Jace, hey, we're going to get on the 1 yard line. And if you can possibly get this thing in and return it, let's do it. And so he did a great job of keeping the ball in play and getting some returns. The punter had some really high punts, and so we handled those really well. And so I thought Jace deserved the special teams black shirt, so he got that. Scout offense, simulation offense. And it's been a guy, and he's had another great week this week. Freshman, my man Levi Duggan, he just keeps on. I know you keep hearing about him, but he is going to be a really good player. He's one of those, and we've talked about when he puts on 30 pounds, he has an off season in the weight room. He's got speed and agility development. He's really going to take off next year and be a really good factor. So Levi Duggan gets that. And then kind of the same thing about this kid. He's gotten multiple black shirts this year. He practices really well. He just loves the team, loves his teammates, and he kills it. But if he can have a great off season in the weight room, put on about 30 more pounds, he is going to be a really good football player. So that's going to be Grady Ferguson. So he's the same guy. Scout simulation defense, Grady Ferguson. So those are our black shirts for last week.
All right, Coach, we're going to shift our attention now, and congratulations to all those guys, by the way, and well-earned honors there with the black shirts. But we're going to shift gears and have our Getting to Know Coach Groves question of the week. And this week it is, who are the most famous sports figures that you have met? I would imagine you've come into contact with some pretty famous coaches and players and things of that nature over the years, so we were just curious about that.
Yeah, when I think about this, just about every big college football coach, I've met and shook hands with and had conversations with. But I started thinking outside of that. I'm like, really? There's not too many that I've met. But the ones obviously that stand out, meeting Dabo Swinney, I just think he's a great dude and just a top-notch football coach. A little bit starstruck when the first time I met Nick Saban.
I'm sure.
He just in this profession, he's probably the greatest college football coach of all time.
What was he like to meet in person?
Just a down to earth guy. I probably was a little starstruck, and just for that fact, he's not very tall. He's and I'm not tall. I'm 5'9", and he's shorter than me. But just everything he's built, everywhere he's been, has been tremendous, and so that was pretty cool. Jim Harbaugh was another cool one. As a kid, growing up, I watched the Colts. Man, he was the quarterback, and he was large.
Captain Comeback, right?
Oh
yeah.
Yeah, and so. Meeting him, he's a little bit larger than I know. He's a big dude, he's 6'6". So meeting him was pretty cool. Herschel Walker, just as a Georgia fan. David Pollock, David Pollock's my favorite all-time Bulldog defensive player. I just think he just played the game with such intensity and effort and just violence.
Greatest strip and recovery touchdown in the history of college football, man. That play he made against South Carolina.
When I was in South Georgia at Valdosta for an FCA event, I got to meet Lee Haney, who was Mr. Olympia. So growing up, just being a weightlifter and my dad kind of being in bodybuilding and a weightlifter himself, anytime you bought a muscle magazine back then, Lee Haney was most likely it was Arnold or Lee Haney. Those were the guys that were on the cover. So meeting him was a pretty cool experience and that. And then, the last one that I met that I thought was pretty cool is Ray Donaldson, the center for the Cowboys. Yeah. We honored him at Rome a few years ago when he was, getting nominated for the Hall of Fame and all that. But just a gargantuan of a man, just shook the biggest hands I've ever shook in my life. He just engulfed my hand, and I said, "Man, I don't know why this guy's a Hall of Fame center because he's just and he said, Coach, don't call me Ray." I said, I'm going to call you Mr. Donaldson. You're Mr. Donaldson. So that was pretty cool. And then I met Dikembe Mutombo one time. So Mr. Ray Donaldson, Mr. Donaldson had the biggest hands. Dikembe Mutombo is the biggest man I've ever met. He ducked out of an elevator when I met him, and I was like, good grief, this dude is huge. Yeah. So that was pretty cool as well.
Heck yeah.
Ian, do you have any?
Yeah, I have a few. For me, I got to meet Danny Werfel at when they opened the Hall of Fame, College Football Hall of Fame in Atlanta. I got to cover it for the magazine and went down there, and he was one of the presenters and one of the nicest dudes on the planet. And when I was a kid, what he did for Spurrier was he was every Gator's idol. So just a class act guy. And then an odd story, a totally by chance opportunity during the Olympics in '96. Will Byington's father, Bill, had tickets to a lot of the Olympic events, and he let us have them. And we're 16-year-old kids. We got down there on MARTA, and we're just having the time of our lives running around Atlanta, going to all these Olympic events. And we're downtown, and we end up in this shoe store randomly. And they hurry and shut the door, and it's because Joe Frazier is in the store. So me and Will and a few of our other buddies that I graduated with are in this shoe store with smoking Joe Frazier. And Joe Frazier sits there and talks to us, calls us young bloods. And at one point he comes in to shake my hand. He says, "All right, young blood." And he goes, "Who am I?" And he was making fun of Ali, who had the bad blood was still there at that point. He was still cracking jokes, but he was super cool, and it was just like, what? How did we even end up in this place at this time to meet Joe Frazier? So that was the one that stands out the most to me. And Will can tell you about that one. I know you know Will.
Yeah.
For me, I guess most of the famous people I've met have been in the baseball world. I met Chipper Jones, John Smoltz, Tom Glavine, a lot of baseball players, Elvis Andrews. One time I met Tony Dungy because he was here for a speaker series out at Barry, and I was at a press conference, had a chance to meet him and ask him a couple of questions, which was pretty cool. But probably the most famous athlete I've ever met is NHL hockey player, oddly enough. But growing up, I was a hockey fan. And when the Atlanta Thrashers were here, we used to be an affiliate at the radio station. So I got to go to a lot of affiliates events and things of that nature. I got the camera only on Coach Groves, and I'm over here talking at this point. But anyway, so one time we were up at the press box taking a tour and that kind of thing. When we came out, a gentleman came out of one of the boxes up there near the press box, and it was Mario Lemieux, famous Penguin hockey player. And a lot of people widely regard him as the second greatest NHL hockey player of all time behind Wayne Gretzky. And so I was a bit starstruck meeting him. And one of the things that you don't do in the media in those situations is ask for an autograph. I broke that rule and asked for one because a couple of kids had asked for one from him just before that and got one. And I got shot down. He was going to give it to me, and then a handler came over or something like that and said, "No, I can't do it."
Yeah.
But so I shouldn't have done that, but I just couldn't resist. But
Right.
Super Mario Lemieux.
Heck yeah, man! I had Mario Lemieux hockey on the Sega Genesis. Boy, I wore that game out.
And the thing about, because I'd met a bunch of NHL players during that time, is just how down to earth and friendly people they were. You know, because obviously, football's a brutal sport. NHL hockey's a brutal sport too. And just rough and all that kind of stuff. But, off the ice, just super nice people. So anyway, that would be the one for me probably.
Very cool.
Yeah. Well, that's going to wrap up our Get to Know Coach Groves segment. And we're going to go ahead and take a break. When we come back, we're going to start talking about the opponent. It's Kings Ridge Christian, also the Tigers. Also, they wear purple, so we're going to have to get specific this week.
It's Darlington and Kings Ridge
Tigers
this week. We'll have to stay focused.
That's exactly right. So we'll talk about that and more when we come back. It's the Coach Groves Show. We'll be right back.
Shop for your next car, truck, or SUV at Riverside Auto Group. Check out riversideautogroup.com today to browse their selection or visit with them in person at Riverside Chevrolet GMC in Rome, Riverside Toyota in Rome, and the all-new Riverside GMC Cadillac in Cartersville. Locally owned and operated by the Welburn family since 1974. That's Riverside Auto Group. Visit riversideautogroup.com.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to our playoff edition of the Coach Groves Show. This is our final segment of the show, and we're going to dive into this week's opponent, Kings Ridge Christian. You're hitting the road for this first-round playoff game, Coach, and it's an unusual kickoff time, 2 p.m. on Friday. Can you tell our listeners and viewers how that came about?
Well, what ended up happening is it's not a light situation, like Mount Vernon. It's a situation where they had an event already planned. They have a huge musical arts production going on that night at 7:00, and the issue is that And I guess we'll figure it out when we get over there. I've never been there, but they have very little parking there, and there's nowhere to park around there. And so that's how the football game got moved up to 2:00. Of course, I offered, we'll host at Darlington. It'll be no problem. Regular start, but it takes a lot to get a game moved like that. And so 2:00 it's going to be, and I think it's going to be the cool deal. I told the kids, I said, we're playing in Georgia high school playoff football, which to me, Georgia high school football is the best high school football in the country. So this is the best playoff football in the country. And guess who gets to kick that off this Friday? We get to start it off. We get to be the first game. So Darlington Tigers and Kings Ridge get to kick off the Georgia high school playoffs. I think it's great. I think it's phenomenal. We'll get rolling with our pregame routine at about 8:30 on Friday morning. We'll do our walkthroughs and not our typical pregame meal. We'll have a little breakfast, biscuits, and that kind of thing. But then we'll head over there about 10 o'clock and get there at 12, and we'll kick off at 2. So,
and I have to ask, just to elaborate on this, for the fans and the students, this being a different kickoff time, I'm sure that they're getting cut out of schools. They're going to be a spirit bus. How will the Tigers fans be able to rally and support your team?
Yeah, there's a spirit bus, and of course, if kids want to come to the game, there's going to be I'm sure they're not going to hold that against them in the school for missing. There's a ton of events going on this Friday at Darlington. You got state cheerleading going on. You've got a state HOSA competition. Just a ton of events. There's a huge art thing, discovery art thing that's going on at Darlington during the day. And so there's going to be kids doing things everywhere. And so we're glad we get to be a part of that and go play some playoff football and represent Darlington and do it in a first-class way. And so that's what we're going to do.
That's exciting, man. Another unusual aspect of the first round is what essentially ended up being a bye week in between the regular season and playoffs, having to do with the weather situation, that's taking place in the state, and some teams not being able to get the regular season in for that last week, so they extended the regular season a week. So on that note, obviously that's a little bit different than the norm in most cases. So how did you and your staff approach the bye week in terms of just keeping guys sharp and in the rhythm of preparation, that you have throughout the season?
Well, a couple different things involved in that. One, we didn't know who our opponent was going to be. And so we weren't going to know who our opponent was going to be until Saturday night after 8 o'clock. That's when all the power rankings, that's when all the ball games would be finished. And so last Friday, even though we didn't play, we weren't affected, and not many schools in Northwest Georgia were affected by the hurricane week. But there were 48 games that had to be made up in middle to South Georgia. And every one of those games, win or loss is going to affect the power ranking and affect seedings and all that. So I didn't find out, they had a podcast, GHSA had a podcast at 8 o'clock on Saturday night. So we didn't find out who our opponent was going to be till after that. And so we found out it was going to be Kings Ridge. Me and Coach Slaney got together real quick and started working on film trade and doing all that. But normally we get that done on Friday night, so we can go ahead and start our breakdown on Saturday. On Sunday, we're doing game planning stuff. And so Sunday got to be a pretty long day for us, as far as, we had to – because I told the coaches, I said, break down what you can. By the time we got the films traded, it was like 10 o'clock at night on Saturday. I said, break down what you can. I didn't want them staying up all night. I said, we'll finish it on Sunday morning, and then we'll do our game planning on Sunday afternoon and evening. So that's what we ended up doing. We took the practice week because we didn't have an opponent. We didn't do much team. We just worked on more individual special teams, individual skills, individual fundamentals, and just kind of got back to some of those things that you don't get once you're game planning an opponent. So we practiced on Tuesday. I gave the kids Monday off. We practiced Tuesday, Wednesday, and on Thursday I surprised them and I took the kids bowling. It's been a long season. We've been a little bit banged up here and there, and so we didn't have an opponent prepare for us. I said, let's just go have some fun. So we went over to East Rome Bowling Alley, and we bowled for about 2 hours and got about 3 games in. And
who won? Because I know you can't take the competitive nature out of you guys.
Well,
so I know it got intense, I'm sure.
Coach Loudermill, he won the first game, and then he got a false score in the second game. They gave him a strike when he only had 9 pins, and I ended up losing to him by 3.
Now you can adjust those scores. I know how to. I played league, man. You can get in there and tweak that.
Yeah, we just let it roll. But we just said, look, if it comes at it's kind of a null and void game. So Coach Loudermill won the coaches there, and then Noah Duggan won the players. I think he bowled like about a 175 or something like that. Nice. And so Noah said it used to be a lot lot better than that. But
he's concentrating on tackling guys right now.
That's right. And that's all he needs to concentrate on right now. He can get better at bowling in the offseason. So congratulations to Noah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. Well, look, this team you're going up against, Kings Ridge, they've experienced their best regular season in program history in terms of wins and losses, finishing 7-3 under their new head coach, Zach Slaney. After watching the film and preparing, what do you feel has contributed to their success this season?
Well, we're talking to Coach Slaney again. When he was hired, Kings Ridge made a commitment to be good at football. And so they've made a commitment from the admissions point, from administrative point, and he's going to hire a full coaching staff there. And so they're doing things very similar to us. They're running flex ball on offense. They're 4-man front, multiple coverages on defense. So they're very similar to us from a schematic point, and they do a really good job. They know what they're doing. They're coached well, and their kids play hard. So it'll be a very interesting matchup, but it'll be a very good matchup and a tough matchup. And I think it'll be a good playoff game.
Well, speaking of some of their kids, let's talk about some of their key players. You mentioned what they do schematically and some of the similarities between each of the Tigers teams there. So let's talk about some of their dudes. Who are some of the key guys that jump off on film for Kings Ridge?
First, the quarterback, number 1, Brody Beach. He's a starter. He's a senior, 6 foot, 175 pounds. They play a young kid sometimes too. Number 18, Patrick Zito. He's a freshman. They have a B-back who is probably their best offensive weapon right now. That is number 11, Austin Dry. He's 6'2", 190 pounds. He's a 1,000-yard rusher. So, you got to obviously account for him at all times. A-back, number 21, Taylor Markakis. That name may sound familiar to you. That's Nick Markakis' son. So he plays running back, A-back. O-lineman, Ethan, and I'll probably butcher this name, Dlugolenski, okay? Right. Dlugolenski. D lineman, O lineman, 6'1", 225 junior. He's a good ball player. They also have number 56 guard and D tackle, Shaw Branch. He's about 6'1", about 260 pounds. Linebacker number 3, Austin Rhodes. He's the Mike. He's 6'2", 200. And then cornerback, the other A-back and cornerback, number 6, senior Chase Fisher. Good little ball player.
Excellent, Coach. Well, you had your first game where Henry was able to get out there and get some valuable reps and learning experience at the quarterback position. So we know he's going to be a key piece of running the offense, and we know the standard things you've got to go do to win a ball game. But talk to us about the keys of the game and what the Darlington Tigers have to do to go get a win on the road. Well,
we've got to have another good practice in the morning. Obviously, we've had good practices this week. We've got to maintain our focus and not let the travel and playoffs and the early start throw off what we got to do from an execution standpoint. But 3 keys: we got to start fast. We got to play physical. We've got to have no negative plays, and then we got to take care of the football. And if we do that, if we go up there with that kind of focus and mindset and do those things, we're gonna get the result that we want.
And before we get into Ian's uniform combo question, because it's coming, I just want to give you an opportunity, since this is taped live on Wednesday evenings at 7 o'clock. I think people still have the opportunity here over the next day or so to tell their boss, hey, it's time to go see the Tigers play.
We need Friday off.
We need to pack these stands with a lot of Darlington purple, huh, Coach?
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. It's going to be a good playoff atmosphere. If you've watched our boys play, they feed off the atmosphere of the crowd. And if the crowd's into it, if the fans are into it, if the bleacher creatures are into it, then it makes our boys play even harder. And so it'll be huge. If you can be there, it's going to do nothing but help our boys be able to perform better. And so we need the crowd packed. We need purple. We need loud, and we need you to be there early.
And if you can't be there, then you can turn your radio up in your office and disrupt the office, because we're going to be excited to be with the Tigers and bring you radio coverage once again on WLAQ. Well, Coach, we're out of time, but just want to take an opportunity to thank you for the time today, and perhaps we can get together and do this again next week.
Yeah, that's the goal. 100%. That's the goal.
And I have a hunch, but we're stormtroopers, right?
Stormtroopers, 100%.
All right.
We're playing Kings Ridge. They're purple and white, so they can be the purple this week. We're going to have the purple pall, but we're going to wear everything else. We're going to wear white. So I tell the guys, if you see purple, you can hit it.
Nice.
Well, we'll close out earlier. We talked about how Kings Ridge is also the Tigers. They also wear purple, but my mom threw this in there, the Purple Dirty 30 Tigers.
That's right.
Go Purple Dirty 30 Tigers.
Indeed.
Dang right.
Yep. Thank you very much for your time. We appreciate you.
All right, thank you, guys.
All right, that puts a wrap on this episode of the Coach Grove Show. Hope everybody has a great weekend, and hope to see you Friday.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's edition of the Coach Groves Show. We invite you to join us again next week as we discuss all things Darlington football with head coach Wayne Groves. Go Tigers!